Today we'll be taking a close look at the tracking device in our player piano. If you haven't watched episode 9, you might want to go back and check that out, as I'll be building on some principles discussed in that episode. The tracking device plays a very active role when the roll is active. Its job is to keep the roll centered, so the music correctly aligns in the paper with the holes in the tracker bar. The tracking device in our player piano revival project was completely derelict, so I gave it a complete overhaul. Let's take a look at how it works. There will be a quiz at the end of this video. The tracking device consists of 3 main parts: 2 pneumatics, one on either side, and a valve box in the middle. There are 4 holes on the outer ends of the tracker bar, which sense the edges of the piano roll. It's crucial that the holes in the paper roll line up with the holes in the tracker bar. If they don't, the music won't be music. With these sensing holes, the tracking device can detect where the piano roll is. If the roll drifts too far to the left or right, the tracking device will respond. Its movement is a little backwards from what you might think. When the device moves to the right, the piano roll moves to the left, and vice versa. The tracking device uses a cam which pushes against the spindle of the right spool chuck to move the roll left or right. The right spool chuck is spring-loaded and is always pushing the piano roll against that cam. Here I cover one of the left sensing holes, simulating that the piano roll may have drifted too far to the left. You can see the tracker responds, pushing the roll back to the right, and vice versa for the other side. With only one inner hole covered and the other 3 open, that means that the roll must have moved too far to one side and needs correction. There may be some cases where the piano roll is wider and both of the inner holes are covered. This leaves the outer holes to do the job of controlling the roll. Now that we know how the tracker works, let's take a look at how the tracker works. To do that, we'll take a closer look inside this valve box, the brain of the machine. I found a spare tracker in my above-ground landfill. Let's crack it open. Time for a little lesson in lobotomy. Now we can take a closer look at all the passages in this valve box. This center section during operation is always under a vacuum, which is pulled through this fitting here. This valve controls airflow either in or out of the pneumatic. When the valve is down, this channel is open to suction, which passes through this port to the pneumatic. This suction pulls the pneumatic closed. When the valve is up, this opens the pneumatic to atmosphere. This allows the pneumatic to open if there's opposing force acting against it. There's 1 valve per pneumatic. If both valves are down, that means both pneumatics have suction. They're the same size, so they balance each other out, centering the roll. When one valve is open and the other is closed, this creates an imbalance, which moves the roll. If both valves are open, the roll will remain in whatever position it's in. Okay, we know the role of the valves. Now let's take a closer look at what exactly these 4 holes in the tracker bar do. They're tubed to these 4 ports on the top of the tracking device. First, we'll follow the flow of atmospheric pressure through this rear port, connected to the outer hole in the tracker bar. With this hole open and the inside of the valve box under suction, air is drawn through this channel, over this cutout valve, through to the pouch that opens the primary valve. Let's check out that thrilling action from another angle. Here's the valve box I overhauled for our project piano. When atmospheric pressure enters the rear ports, or the outer holes on the tracker bar, it passes through this cutout valve and inflates this pouch. When the hole in the tracker bar closes, the atmospheric pressure trapped underneath the pouch is vented through this hole. This allows the pouch to collapse and the valve to drop down and close. Okay, we know the outer tracking holes are tubed to the rear portion of the tracking device and control the valves. But let's say we have a piano roll that's a little bit narrower and only covers the inner tracking holes. Then what? Those outer tracking holes are still open. Well, there's a way around that. That's where this overhead pouch comes in. It can push down on the cutout valve, restricting airflow to the main valve. Even though the rear port is open and air is flowing through the cutout valve into the pouch well, lifting the valve, the overhead pouch can override that. Let's take a look at that from another angle in the valve block that I rebuilt. Here you can see the overhead pouch, which inflates with atmospheric pressure. It pushes down on the little wood button that's on top of the cutout valve. Here I'm simulating that force with tweezers pushing down. If the cutout valve held down, airflow is stopped at this point. You'll notice that the overhead pouch has a larger diameter than the cutout valve. This greater surface area allows for more force to be applied, allowing the overhead pouch to override the cutout valve. Now, even though the two upper or outer holes are open to atmosphere, we can override that. Well, I hope this was helpful. By far, this auto piano tracker is one of the most complicated pneumatic mechanisms you'll find in any home player piano. While I find it to be a very reliable design, it still has its limitations. It particularly struggles with rolls that have damage. Here's one that's pretty bad. Not only is the leader dog-eared, but the edges are all chewed up. What was the name of this one again? Oh, yeah, that tracks. But it doesn't. With the left edge of the piano roll chewed up like that, the tracker's getting a false reading and doesn't know exactly where the roll really is. It's generally only under extreme circumstances like this that the tracker can't case the edge of the roll. That's why it's called an edge case. Thankfully, most of the piano rolls in my collection aren't chewed up like this, but I've learned the hard way to put my toys away when I'm done. Okay, quick recap. The rear holes of the tracking device are tubed to the outer holes on the tracker bar. These control the valves for the pneumatics. But the overhead pouch can override that with the cutout valve. The overhead pouches are tubed to the inner holes on the tracker bar. The different holes, different valves, and different placements of the holes help the tracker keep track of and maintain the position of the roll. For anyone that's made it this far into the video, I hope there's somebody. Well, stay tuned. I've got something big for you next week. I mean, if you want. No pressure. Oh crap, the quiz! Alright, one question. If you took anything away from this video, did you find the blue mouse? Yes.